Emergency Operations Conversations. I am your host, Jeff Perkins, and it is a pleasure to have you with me again as we roll into another episode about communications, my absolute favorite thing. And anybody that knows me probably will tell you the same thing, that I am a comms nerd through and through. So I'm really, really happy to have a guest with me today that is from the comms world. His name is Brian Gould, and he is representing T-Mobile for Government today. And I'll go ahead and, Brian, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the listeners out there, so that way they get to know exactly who you are, where you come from, and why you're on the podcast today. So, like I said, my guest today is Brian Gould, and he is the Public Safety Segment Advisor for T-Mobile for Government in the Northeast region. Brian works with agencies and first responders to strengthen operational resilience, helping them stay connected through tools like T-Priority and T-Satellite, initiatives that ensure reliable communication even in the toughest of environments. Before joining T-Mobile, Brian spent decades in public service. He served as chief of police for the town of, now I'm going to try not to get this too wrong, Cheektowaga?
Excellent.
Cheektowaga, New York. All right. Shout out to Cheektowaga, New York, just outside of Buffalo, where he led one of Western New York's largest suburban departments, focusing on modernization, officer wellness, and crisis intervention training. He is also a lifelong firefighter with Bellevue Fire District, where he spent more than 20 years, including 4 as chief, commanding major incidents and managing federal recruitment and retention grants. Beyond the field, Brian has been an educator and mental health advocate, teaching crisis intervention team courses at the Erie County Central Police Academy and serving as an adjunct professor of criminal justice at Hilbert College. He's also a graduate of the FBI National Academy's 250th session and holds both a bachelor's and master's degree in criminal justice from Hilbert College. In short, Brian's career is a blueprint for what it means to evolve with the field while never losing sight of the mission. Today, we'll talk about his journey from public service to public safety innovation and what he's learned along the way, and how technology like T-Satellite is redefining what it means to stay connected when it matters most. Brian, welcome. Very, very warm welcome to the EOC podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for what you do putting this together. It's always helpful to have people who are out here spreading the word about what's important when it comes to communication. Obviously, that's what my career is now, in interacting with public safety representatives from across the nation now. And having someone like you who's doing this podcast is just another way that we can get that important message out. So thank you.
Heck yeah. No, it's just another way of communicating, right? Getting the word out there. Like I said at the opening, right, I'm a total nerd for communications. So whether it's on a radio or whether it's on camera and a podcast, definitely getting the information out there, because really people don't know tools exist unless they're told about them. And when it comes to technology, things are advancing so quickly. It's all about what you know and who you know and who can provide it for you. And when everything goes wrong, you got to know who your friends are. And I will be the first to say T-Mobile has been very good friends to us here in Oregon, helped us out tremendously. So really appreciate, what T-Mobile's doing in the space. But I'm going to bring it back to you to start this out. And I will say, so you graduated from college, and now you're teaching at that very same college. That's kind of cool. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I actually, after high school, I went to community college where I got an associate's degree in fire protection. Ended up as a 911 dispatcher for my local department here in Cheektowaga, and spent 3 years doing that. And while I was doing that, I was trying to get a firefighter job up in the Northeast. It's all pretty much civil service, taking tests, trying to get hired. And then in the meantime, the police test came up. So I took that, did well enough on that, and got hired, and spent many years as a patrolman and a sergeant, and made it to the rank of lieutenant. And we had a program where we were accepting interns from the Hilbert College. And because we accepted interns, we got tuition vouchers. And started taking one class a semester, working towards my bachelor's degree. After about 3.5 years, I finished that while I was working. And they talked me into enrolling in the master's degree program in criminal justice administration. So it fit well with my career path at that time as I was moving up in the ranks. Thought it would be something helpful that would not only helped me resume wise as far as advancement, but also the critical thinking skills that come with an advanced degree and further education. So I look back now, I love the fact that I did it. I very much enjoyed being back in school, even if I was one of the older persons in the classroom. But definitely, it was a great experience to go back to school. And then after I got my master's, they asked me to come back and teach. So I did a couple semesters as an adjunct professor at Hilbert College, shaping the future of the profession of law enforcement.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I know, so I went to Arizona State University, go Devils, and got my bachelor's degree in emergency management. And I know that every single time that we had somebody come in that wasn't, their career was not in academia, right? They actually did the job that they're now educating for. You could tell the difference. It was a completely different environment. You coming in as someone that, walked a mile in the boots probably really drew a lot of attention, right? So some of the kids that probably sit in the back of the class and are dozing off or whatever, right? They're probably like, oh, this guy's actually, he's not just a teacher. He actually did what I'm wanting to do. So that's always really cool from a student perspective. There's really no one else better to learn from than someone that's actually been out there and done that. But yeah, like you've served as both a fire chief and a police chief. Now that's rare. That's rare because sometimes the two don't always get along. They don't always. They're not best friends all the time. So doing both, how did those experiences like shape your leadership style?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my first career path intention was the fire service. I after reaching the rank of Eagle Scout, I looked to see what was next, and the Explorer program within the Boy Scouts drew my attention, and I ended up joining the Fire Explorer, the local volunteer fire company. As you mentioned, town of Cheektowaga is the first from suburb of the city of Buffalo. About 90,000 people live here, but we're protected by 10 volunteer fire districts. And it was just one of those things. I joined the Explorer post once I turned 18. I became an active volunteer firefighter. Went took my EMT test. I was loving life doing that. Took as many classes as I can. So advancement. I think I point back to my time in the Boy Scouts, just the leadership skills and what that instilled in me at a young age. And as I was rising through the ranks at work, I also was rising through the ranks at the volunteer fire departments. Now, I will admit they were not at the same time because being a chief of any agency is definitely time consuming if you're going to do it right. But I spent 4 years as the chief of the Bellevue Volunteer Fire Company. It was most of the time while I was a lieutenant within the police department. 4 years I think is enough time to leave your mark, get what accomplish what you can, and then pass the torch to those who are coming up to keep the younger people active. At the same time, I had a weird path in my rise in the police department. Again, everything civil service. Made it to the rank of captain, and then we had an assistant chief and a chief. And my chief at the time ended up applying for and accepting a position as the chief of Asheville, North Carolina. It was Chief Dave Zach. So that gave me a little bit of room to move up to assistant chief. And then tragically, our chief at the time while I was assistant uh, died at a young age of a cardiac issue. So, really kind of sped up the process to where I would reach that rank. But again, just the preparation, the time spent learning, the time spent building relationships, both within the department, within the town politics, definitely helped me advance and then helped me make the department and leave a positive mark on the department.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look back over how you kind of rose to where you went in public safety, you really earned it, right? It wasn't given to you. You really made your own path. And I think that unique way that you went there gave you a really well-rounded idea of incident command, because you knew both sides. You knew the law side, you knew the fire side, you even knew the 911 side as a 911 dispatcher. So really well-rounded experience that you had there. And so when you look back on the lessons that you learned from all of those different positions in public safety, what has really carried over most strongly into what you do now for T-Mobile?
I think the number one thing, and you hit on this a little bit earlier during the introduction, is that um, your ability to build relationships prior to needing them is absolutely critical. When the disaster is hitting, for us, the frequent major challenge were snowstorms. If we didn't have that working relationship with the highway department to get the high lifts out in front of the police cars to go make the rescues during the blizzard of 22 that we went through, if we didn't have those relationships with the volunteer fire departments who always, you know how dispatchers are, right? It's always toughest job in the field, if you ask me. And everybody's always got criticism of how a call was handled or dispatched. But when you're can say that you've done it, and then you have the relationship with the people who might not be happy with how something was handled, it's a lot easier to get to a solution and to solve issues. So I really think that the relationships are the key to what happens and how well a situation gets.
Fire, flood, blizzards, tornadoes, blackouts, earthquakes, wildfires, hurricanes. When disaster strikes, it's not up to luck. It's up to you. You can't predict the next emergency, but you can prepare for it. Keep your family and yourself safe when everything else falls apart. At the Sapper Company, we build mission-ready survival kits and first aid kits for every situation. From one-person essentials to 10-person family and team kits. From one-day outages to weeks off the grid. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit sappercompany.com today and be mission ready, because when the time comes, readiness is everything.
Yeah, we have a saying here in Oregon that interoperability is all about relationships. We really put an emphasis on, making sure that no matter who they are or who they represent, if they're a partner in any way, shape, or form, we want to have that relationship established and strong before something bad happens. So we really work with all of our carriers and our wireline carriers, our wireless carriers. Doesn't matter who it is. We make sure that we bring them in early and often, and we have that trust built, because when things are really going wrong, it's those relationships that determine how quickly people can recover and get back on with their lives, right? So that's really, really important, and it's something that I preach all the time. I've been heard saying it's all about relationships many, many, many times. It's on our interoperability mug, so that's something else. So yeah, absolutely 100%. I'm glad that our friends at T-Mobile and our friends at all the other carriers, they feel the same way, that those relationships are important. Because if you've got one side of the coin thinking the relationship's important and the other not, that's when you've got some serious interoperability challenges. But I want to kind of go into your experience, obviously, as in your paid position coming up, right? As a law enforcement officer and eventually a chief of police. Now, what were some of the biggest challenges that your department there in Western New York faced, and how did communications factor into solving those problems?
Good question. I mean, the biggest thing that I dealt with during my time as chief was the staffing issues. We saw uh, we saw a lot of recruitment and retention challenges when it came to policing, which we worked on different procedure or different things where worked with our school districts to try to entice young people to be interested in the career. Again, doesn't really have a good tie into the communication piece, but we also saw struggles when it comes to communication. One of the things that even to this day, we didn't really get a good solution to in my community yet was the interoperability. We put a lot of it is a good example of where it comes into play, right? Is that we were big supporters of fixed license plate readers. We were highly affected by the Kia challenge. We had a lot of stolen cars going on, and we had a lot of pursuits from those stolen cars. And in Western New York, we have a lot of different policing. Obviously, the city of Buffalo is a large agency, but the town of Cheektowaga is just one of many suburbs that surrounds it. And to this day, it's still not easy for one agency to talk to another. Each agency goes out and specs their own radio system. Sometimes the systems don't communicate with each other. And when you have a pursuit of a stolen vehicle from another jurisdiction coming into your jurisdiction, and you're not able to communicate directly with them, that can create some challenges, and some safety issues. So there were definitely some major communication challenges. Uh, you know, Having funds to update the infrastructure, obviously that's a challenge when taxes. Nobody wants to see their taxes go up. Yet at the same time, I'm coming into them telling them I have a quote for $900,000 to upgrade our emergency communication system for the police and fire radios, and trying to find the funding for that. So many things over my time, either as captain, assistant chief, or chief, that were just major projects that revolved around communications. And then ultimately, we go to emergency situation scenes. Um, we we towards the end of my career, we were challenged by the blizzard of 22. Our community saw 50 people die during that blizzard. We had people calling 911 trapped in their car, and we were just not able to get to them. So the number of calls actually made all of our communication specialists stay, our dispatchers stay. Not that they could go anywhere anyways, but we were keeping track and a log of all the calls, all the people who called. We were calling them back periodically and checking on them, making sure, nothing's changed, that they were staying warm. And in fact, we had some people who weren't. And one of them was a great story where a gentleman actually broke into a school and then started a snowblower and went out and was able to rescue other people and get them into the school. So again, communication just plays such a huge role in so many different situations. And it's a challenge, and that's why it's important. And one of the things that I say now in my current career is that we need to make sure that we know what's available, what technology is going on, because the technology is advancing faster than any of us could ever imagine.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and unintentionally date you here for that, Chief. So when you first became a police officer right out of academy, were radios a little different than they are now?
Yeah. So we had a batch of radios, and you had to come at the beginning of your shift and pick one up. Sometimes there weren't enough radios because somebody would have taken one home by mistake. They were on a low band frequency that the portable radio didn't work from everywhere. You had to sometimes relay through someone with a mobile radio to get back to dispatch. Go way back on the fire service side, like the Plectron receivers. It can go back a little bit on some of this stuff, but now to see the integration that's going on in the radios, even with a SIM cellular backup on public safety radios, it's just absolutely amazing. And I haven't even talked about satellites yet.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Don't worry. We'll get to satellite soon enough, because that definitely is playing a crucial role into it. But if you'd have to look at the first 10 years of your career and the last 10 years of your career, would you say that the last 10 years of your career technology moved faster, and just the new stuff that hit the marketplace just seemed to always come, and the second that you think that maybe you got your communications tools and technology in a row, by the time you have it all implemented, there's something new that seems to have replaced whatever you just spent a bunch of money trying to implement?
Yeah, absolutely. And that speaks to your decisions when you look at what you're purchasing too, right? Like there's even companies now that are leasing technology equipment rather than purchasing it, selling it for purchase, because of how fast it's changing. And making sure that you have hardware upgrades built into on a replacement cycle, because the technology is just changing so fast. I started with pen and paper in the police car, and by the time I left, we were live streaming dash cameras to dispatch as well as body cameras. So would have never imagined just the fact that we could run license plates in the cars when the first MDTs, mobile data terminals, came out. It was a huge thing for us. The older guys didn't want the car that had the computer in it, but guys like me who were younger at that time always wanted that car because we'd be out there, running every plate we saw and doing everything we can. And now we're at the point where we take a car out of service if the computer doesn't work. So it's
Yeah.
been an amazing transformation in just 25 years.
Yeah, and those tools are excellent for, first responder situational awareness, right? Just knowing what's going on around you. Because like you said, you're out there running plates and everything. And that when you're able to do that and you're able to get that information so quick, you kind of know what's going on around you. You know if that vehicle is stolen. You kind of know some of the history related to that. If maybe they were able to, get a plate or something like that, and maybe it was a gotaway or something like that. But all of a sudden now, oh wait, that's a return that I should probably be very careful around this vehicle, and that could be potentially life-saving situational awareness for a first responder. So, from your perspective, how important are these technologies to that situational awareness and safety for those frontline responders?
Oh, absolutely critical. And it's taking us leaps and bounds from where we were. Like prior call history at an address, or prior interactions with the person in your master name file. Having that history, because we know the best predictor of the future is the past. So knowing how somebody's interacted with law enforcement, or kick it to the fireside, being able to see your pre-plans or your hazardous material list within a building, even your hydrants locations, because sometimes they get covered in snow. And it's just, or knowing what size water mains are underneath the street. It's just the amount of information that has been gathered is immense. And thankfully now we're seeing technology that's able to access all that together quickly if the strong enough connection is there.
And that's what's going to lead me to my next question is, all of that needs some sort of source of connectivity. It's gotta be able to connect. And you had said that, now if the vehicles, don't have those situational awareness tools and MDTs and whatnot, they're actually taken out of service. They're considered not fit for that responder to do their job in. So when communications failed, what did you do? Did you ever have like situations when you were either a officer all the way to chief, or even in your roles with the fire department, did you ever have like critical communication failures? And if you did, what did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah. One of the ones I can think most vividly about is that we had an ice storm where power was taken out to the police station. And here, our police station was a PSAP as well. So we had a 911 center. All 911 phone calls came into the police station, and then we dispatched police and fire out of our station. And of course, the station has a backup generator. And when the power went out, the generator kicked on, and it was quite a storm. And the estimated time of restoration was not looking good for power, but we were okay. We had the generator running until the generator died, and then life got really interesting. So obviously, we had a battery backup in our dispatch center that ideally is there to take that 1 minute between the generator startup and the power going off. But now it was, hey, we have about 30 minutes before every computer in here shuts off and the radio system goes down, and 911 goes down. Now, obviously, there's some redundancy built into 911s where it would ring to another dispatch center, but our communication with our units in the field would have been down. We were able to quickly contact our county, who has backup dispatch centers for us that we were able to spin up conveniently enough for us. The Erie County Fire Training Academy is directly behind our police station, and that's one of their backup sites. So they were able to set up a couple workstations within 15 minutes. We sent a couple dispatchers over there, and we just waited until the computer started going off. And then we said, okay, start answering the calls in the back. And to the officers on the street, to the firefighters, to the public, no one even noticed that there was an issue. However, there was a lot going on in those 15, 20 minutes to to make that happen, and a lot of panic. But as we chatted a little bit before we started, that's pace planning, right? That's where you have to have that alternative and those contingent and then your emergency plans. And I can tell you, after that happened, I was talking with the town about we need a backup generator because it's too critical. Was happy to say that that was a project that did get funded, and we were able to make sure that we're going to hopefully never go through a situation like that again. But it's all about building redundant systems and making sure that you can keep your critical communications up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on one of my favorite acronyms, PACE. And I'm not talking about the salsa, yeah, having that primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, having those plans and being able to seamlessly, roll to the next one when the one before it isn't working. That's really, the key to success when everything is going 1,000 miles an hour and you're just trying to keep up, and I'll tell you what, it is a good, of how well your pace planning was when the public doesn't know that their call is being taken in a different place or from a different method, right? So that is the ultimate sign of success. But now where you're at, obviously you're now helping people kind of with those pace plans, or maybe not making the plans themselves, but you're making sure that they have an A and a C and an E, if they need to, all in one device. So that you can almost have a one device pace plan with some of the technology that's coming out there. Before we get necessarily into the technology, I kind of want to know about, now that you've left the public safety sector, but are still kind of involved, because you're advocating for public safety from the private sector. So public safety segment advisor, what does that look like day to day?
It's cool because it's different day to day. You never really know. So our roles are, there's a couple of public safety advisors or segment advisors. We also call it industry segment advisors. And we're really the subject matter experts for the leadership team here at T-Mobile. I'm giving them advice when it comes to product design, marketing, needs of first responders, making sure that when the company builds a product that it's going to solve an issue or be what the first responders needs, finding pain points, making sure that the company understands the pain points that agencies might be understanding. We're also supporting the sales teams. T-Mobile is very unique in that when they built their public safety sales team, they hired 48 retired law enforcement to do just sales. So although that's not my position, we support them with relationships in the field. Obviously, my time at the FBI National Academy has helped me build a lot of relationships across the nation. But my position also supports the emergency response team. So if an agency is experiencing or an area is experiencing a disaster or an emergency situation, we're monitoring that situation. We're reaching out to points of contacts that we have, seeing if there's anything that we can provide to help. Even boots on the ground responding to some situations, being an extra resource within a command center. The other thing, sometimes those are planned events as well. So anytime there's a national special security event, those are major gatherings that the federal government classifies as a national special security event. So this year, the Super Bowl, the Army's 250th birthday, the inauguration, there've been a bunch, United Nations General Assembly in New York City. A lot of times there are command posts set up. And you can imagine that if there was some communication equipment that went down around Washington, D.C. during the inauguration parade, you can't just have a truck with two guys pulling up to go fix it in the middle of the parade. So it's critical that they have that link to the critical infrastructure command people. And that's really the role we play when we staff those command centers. So it's cool because my job is really all over the place. I also, get to do some of the marketing work, attend a lot of the trade shows, the conferences, the ones that I used to go to as a chief at the police and the fire departments. I'm still attending them, still networking with people in the profession and building those relationships that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, it's all about relationships. And it sounds like, you've been able to establish some pretty solid relationships, in your public safety career. And now you're able to kind of use those and capitalize on them. And really use that trust that you've already built, in some of these responses. And I'll speak, personally. I've had emails from you in my inbox making sure everything's okay when a county goes dark, things like that. So it's nice to know who your friends are, and like I said, when everything starts going wrong, it feels like the world's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, and it's hard to really keep on top of everything. So it's good to have good friends in your corner, and those relationships, like I said, can really determine how quickly our communities can recover from disaster. And it's nice that T-Mobile supports you in that mission and allows you to kind of take that experience. That's why they hired you, right? Is because you have that experience, and they, are they pretty much, long leash, the mission, go forth and conquer, or is there really strict left and right limits on what you shall or shall not do, when it comes to carrying out your duties?
That's what I wanted to mention is sales drives profits for companies, right? No matter what company you are, Pepsi needs to sell more Pepsi, and Ford needs to sell more cars, and wireless carriers want to sell more phones. That's what pays the bills. But I just am so appreciative and grateful that a company like T-Mobile understands the criticalness of having people that aren't focused on sales, but focused on making sure we're supporting the mission of what we provide. And so many times, we've been able to help communities and agencies that are responding to disasters who may not even be T-Mobile customers. It doesn't matter when lives are on the line, when first responders are responding to dangerous situations, we have the green light to do whatever it takes to keep them connected. And that's really, it's not, well, are they a customer, or how many lines are they going to buy at some point? Or it's get out there and support them. And, that obviously when you are that dedicated to the mission, it helps with the reputation of the company. And I would hope, and I feel strongly that, we're doing a good job when it comes to making sure the first responder world understands that T-Mobile has a lot of resources, has an amazing network that's able to support during critical times. They have people like me who they let run without that leash, and let us be out there to really get whatever we need to keep people connected.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. And one of the biggest challenges out there is how do you keep people talking when everything else goes wrong? How do we keep people connected? Because if people aren't connected, they can't call for help. And then the people that, like what you did in your career, was you were the ones that responded to that call for help. And then you had to use some of these technologies, like you were mentioning, to go and respond and be able to help the people that are calling for help. So T-Mobile's made some pretty significant investments in how they kind of support users that are public safety. And one of the initiatives is T Priority. Can you explain what T Priority it is, and how does it support first responders?
Absolutely. So, a lot of first responders uh, are aware of priority preemption, right? We feel that our mission requires our devices to stay connected, more than a fan at the game who wants to live stream a touchdown pass or something like that, right? So the people working security at that game, their devices are a little bit more critical. Or the search and rescue teams after a hurricane has come through, they're more critical. So the three major carriers, we all realize that. FirstNet from AT&T is obviously a very well known attempt at making sure that uh, you know AT&T's product that is there to help first responders stay connected. And what T-Mobile realized is that with the spectrum and the different bands that we have, and the network, the strength of our network, the strength of our coverage, that we could definitely provide a product that would be useful for our first responders. But we had to have a way to give them priority and preemption upon this massive network with great capacity that's out there. And what we did was we developed T Priority, and T Priority is it's built on our 5G standalone core. So, we spent some time talking about technology advancements, and instead of identifying just one band and making that the first responder band, we are giving priority and preemption to our T Priority customers on every band. And they were able to do that through that 5G standalone core technology. So as long as the user is connected to a 5G standalone core network, our network, which is, a very large percentage of our network at this time, the network, it takes a network slice. So it takes a section of every band instead of just one band and makes that available for our first responders, for our T priority customers. But one of the most unique things about network slicing and a great show of technology advancing is because we're using that newer technology, that slice is actually dynamic. So if you have an area where you have a lot of first responders with not much capacity on a cellular network, a band can become overwhelmed. But because we have a slice, that slice will dynamically expand and will even knock off regular users to make sure that first responders have the connection that they need during a time of emergency.
Yeah, and that's that's extremely important. And you mentioned like making sure the fan at the game that wants to uh live stream the touchdown, that can take a lot of bandwidth, and you don't want to be taking away from first responders. So being able to kind of um bully them off the network is extremely important, so that way the communications that first responder is relying on can go through. And sometimes that can mean the difference between life and death. And it's really important that they're able to get that communication across. If maybe they're maybe they're giving out the direction of somebody who's an active shooter or something like that. Like that information absolutely needs to be communicated. So it's really important that those first responders are able to no matter what they're using, no matter what carrier it is, that they're able to get that critical information communicated. But it's not just stopping at T priority. And now we're talking about T satellite, which is satellite direct to your device, right to the phone you already have in your hand, as long as it's a 5G phone, right? And tell me more about T satellite. How does that work, and how is that kind of changing the game when it comes to there's nothing left? What do we do? How do we communicate? In those instances, how is that really changing the game?
Yeah. So T-Mobile was fortunate or smart, however you want to look at it, to to recognize that the future is using low Earth orbiting satellites. So our traditional satellites way up there, there's a lot of time for the data to go up and come back down. When we talk about low Earth orbiting satellites, think Starlink. That's really the pioneer in the field. And T-Mobile has formed a partnership, and we're using the Starlink satellites to support our network when it comes to cellular communication in the event of there being no cellular towers close by. And think of it this way: your phone is always trying to grab the closest tower, and when it does, that's how it's sending the transmission of the data, the phone call, or text messages. But sometimes, either because of physical damage or because you're just happen to be in the middle of nowhere, your phone can't reach a tower. Well, with the low Earth orbiting satellites and the mesh network of satellites that's being created above us by Starlink, your phone, instead of seeing a terrestrial cell site, is seeing that satellite as a cell site above you, and it's seamlessly connecting to that. Right now, the system is sending text messages. It's working. Text messages go through perfectly fine. We're also expanded into some light data. So some apps that we've worked with the developers of the app to make sure that the data isn't too intensive. Obviously, streaming video is going to be a step at some point. Who knows what the future holds when it comes to that? Really, it's been about having a rollout where people understand that it is that you're not on a regular site. So, that it might take a little bit longer to go through, but it's still going through. And then we wanted to make sure that the capacity is going to be there, that everything's going to work. Because, if you just turn everything on at once and it's not a great experience, well, then people are just going to think it doesn't work. We've done a staged rollout where we started with the data through the text messages, and now we're doing light data apps such as, you know, all trails, some weather maps, and we're also working with individual companies. One of them that is active in the first responder world is DM Innovations with their Florian solution that tracks personnel. So picture a wildfire. Most of the time, pretty remote areas. You might, as a chief of a wildfire brigade, you might have firefighters out. You're trying to arrange drops with your aerial support, and you have to have your best idea of where they are. Well, with 3AM, with 3M's 4AM solution and T satellite, you can see exactly where they are, dots on a map of where your people are. And we really feel it's a game changer. The other thing I want to mention too about T satellite is getting information out to the communities. Wireless emergency alerts, we're all familiar with them when your phone goes crazy and you get this message over there and everybody next to you's phone is going off. That's great when the network's up, but we know that when hurricanes come through, sometimes they cause too much physical damage to the networks and there is just no communication. Well, we were able to get permission to start using our T satellite to send out those wireless emergency alerts. And just some notes. I'm looking on my computer here so I get the numbers right. During Hurricanes Helene and Milton, we had over 200 wireless emergency alerts pushed out through T satellite. So that's information that could be life saving, getting out to people in the communities that are affected by natural disaster.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say that during that same time, that same year, there was here in Oregon, there was a wildfire that burned the only strand of fiber going into one of our counties here. And everybody, no matter what carrier you had no cell phone service, you had no internet, you had no landline phones, you had no ability to go to the grocery store and purchase your food, your water, you couldn't buy fuel. There was really nothing available unless you had cash on you. And if you wanted to go get cash, you couldn't get it because the ATMs couldn't connect to the internet, and the bank teller inside the bank couldn't get access to your account information, and they couldn't give you any cash. So it was kind of a natural disaster that turned into a man-made disaster. And I will say that T-Mobile stepped up and said, hey, this is something we were using in the hurricanes, and we're going to use it here in Oregon, and we're going to allow our users, our subscribers, to be able to send and receive text messages. And then also, there's a wildfire burning nearby that just burned the fiber line. We need to make sure that people can be, evacuated, that they know that, when it's their turn to pack up and go, that they're at least alerted. And the way that, that was being carried out was through those wireless emergency alerts, or WIAs. And T-Mobile made it so that regardless of what your carrier was, you were able to get those wireless emergency alerts. So really doing some innovative stuff, in that marketplace and impacting actual lives. In addition to, what they do to keep first responders communicated, they made sure that the public was connected and could, reach out to a loved one and let them know that they're okay. They could, at least have that communication and also know if they're in harm's way and that they needed to get out of that situation. So really, really cool stuff that T-Mobile's doing, not only with the T Priority, but with the T Satellite, partnering with, Starlink and bringing it online as quickly but carefully as T-Mobile did it. It was really a game changer in the space. But as you look at, some of the local agencies and emergency management organizations that maybe don't really know about this technology, how is T-Mobile reaching out to those locals and those different agencies and letting them know, like, hey, this is what we have now. It didn't exist before, but now we want you to know about it. What does that outreach look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jeff, because truly, as a law enforcement, as an agency leader, you have to stay up on the technology. So participating in it in podcasts like this, attending the trade shows, the state chiefs meetings, the big fire shows, doing a lot of marketing, just getting the word out there. And it's not, it's not all about sales. It's about making sure that leaders know what's available, because if there is a failure, it's not going to be the IT department standing in front of the news camera saying, why people died. It's going to be the public safety agency. So we really want to make sure that we're educating our public safety leaders within the community so that they understand the resources, the technology that's out there, that there are options out there, right? 'Cause I will tell you this, that when I was chief of police, COVID happened and a lot of people were working from home, and we were starting to drop calls on our phones, even in my office. And by no means should that happen in a town of 90,000 people. And it ended up being that it was just congestion on a network. And instantly my mind went to, well, we need to switch to this carrier because everybody knows that they're the first, they're the carrier that does first responder stuff. And we didn't really even look at anything else. We just went to the IT department and said, hey, we need to be on this network. And now our message is to the leaders that, there are many viable options out there. And T-Mobile is certainly one of those. You look at some of the agencies that have looked at us and have switched, including the city in New York, FDNY, NYPD, Miami. Uh, some major departments, we're seeing a lot of success in getting agencies to switch to T-Mobile. And, I look at that success, although on a business side, that's great for the business. But ultimately, that means that there was an agency that found that there was a product out there that could give them better service than what they had. So they made the decision to switch. And that's what it's all about, is making sure that our first responders have the best available tools to do their job out there.
Yeah, 100%. And as we start looking forward to the future, I have my opinions about what the next decade looks like for public safety communications, and I have a feeling that, like, just as I look back of what there existed 10 years ago looks old now, I can only imagine what things will look like. And not even look like, but the capabilities. So obviously the looks change, right? The form factors change. The tools look cooler as we go further into the future. But when you really think about the next decade, 10 years from now, what do you think that decade holds for public safety communications, and specifically, and how, wireless plays into that, and how does LTE play into that? And really, what do you think that public safety comms is going to look like 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. It's going to be interesting to see how artificial intelligence plays into communications. T-Mobile's already using it in our self-organizing networks to monitor network traffic, to make adjustments to networks when there is an issue. But is it going to be able to send real-time alerts based upon camera feeds and police chases? Those might be a thing of the past, based upon how quickly we can get information on the street cameras back to the officers. So instead of a high speed chase going through a community, we're just tracking a vehicle using those technologies. Drones as first responders are a huge advancement. But again, that comes back to having that reliable, fast connection. What's it going to look like in 10 years? That's super interesting. I think we're going to continue to find ways to make communication fast, secure, and consistent, and hopefully at a cost that is available for officers across the nation, not just the most advanced agency.
Yeah, and I think, really with me, it's the biggest improvement I think we can make in public safety communications is that reliable backbone. Where does the communication originate from, and how can we make that more resilient? But that's something for another episode and another time. So I won't get into that particularly today, but I would like to. I started on a personal note about your career and how you got to where you are, and I want to end on a personal note as well with a couple of questions. And I want to ask, like, this is a different time, right now than when you entered the public safety career field, but there are some similarities. There's a lot of tradition, right, in public safety career fields, whether it's police or fire. So what advice would you give to someone who's considering, just starting out in their career? What advice would you give that person?
Like, buckle up, right? Because every day is going to be different. Whatever position within public safety that you serve, we never know what's coming tomorrow. And we've seen, some crazy examples of that. Just when you thought you've lived through the worst storm, another bad one comes along. They think of the people that you're serving, think of the lives that you're affecting, have pride in that. It's challenging to recruit and retain some people in the public sector sometimes, but there really is no more rewarding career than serving the community that you live in, by making a difference, by being that person when the sky's falling and everything is falling apart, that you're the sense of calm that comes in, you're the lifesavers that come in and really make that difference. And there's no amount of pay that can compensate you for that. It's just this self-satisfaction knowing that you're you're helping your fellow citizens out. It's kind of why I still love, why I love this job so much, is because although I still do the first responder side on the fire department, which just before you messaged me, I was coming back from a call, but I'm still interacting with first responders, which is awesome, and making sure that they're protected and able to serve as best as they can. So very fortunate, extremely proud to be part of this team, and just love being out here still interacting with first responders.
All right. And kind of in that same realm, now you're like, let's consider that there's a somebody that's worked in public safety their entire career. They're getting ready to retire, and they want to be done with maybe riding on a fire engine or going on patrol, and they want to maybe enter the pub or the private sector. What advice would you give that a first responder going in that private sector role?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of focus on that. Obviously, in the public safety world, we're able to retire younger than most people, still have a lot of time left after, which is needed with what we go through during our careers. But, making sure that you're building your resume throughout your career, that you're able to, build those relationships that are going to be useful to a company in the private sector, and that, just having those connections, because one of the things that helped me out in obtaining my position was my position within the FBI National Academy Associates in our New York State chapter. So being active in your profession, building those relationships, and figuring out a way to use those to support the company that you're looking to work for.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your service, to the people of New York, for the length of time that you did and you continue to. And I also want to thank you for not just that, but continuing that service and making sure that first responders stay communicating when it matters most, and making sure that the people out there that need help can call and ask for it, and the first responders that go can stay connected and stay safe. So I really want to thank you for everything you've done in your career, and I want to thank you for joining me today on the podcast. If people want to get more information about T-Mobile for Government, where can they go to find out more information?
Yeah, absolutely. Good Google search on T Priority. I'm sure I'll come up with our T Priority landing site. There's a spot in there to enter your information, and somebody will reach out to you. Somebody from our public safety team will follow up. See us at a show. We're running. We're supporting most of the major all the big ones, and a lot of the statewide conferences across the country. We're supporting those organizations that are putting them on by having vendor space at those events. So, or find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to link you up with the person who's closest to you to, set up a meeting to let you know what T Priority is all about in a lot more detail than we had time to go into it today. So I appreciate you, Jeff, what you're doing, how you're trying to help get the word out about communications and preparing for emergencies, and it's critical work that we're thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brian, thanks again for joining us. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening. I will put a link in the description about where you can find out more about T-Mobile for Government, T Priority, and T Satellite, and all the things that T-Mobile is doing right now as far as keeping first responders communicated. So I want to thank you very much for joining me on today's episode of the EOC Podcast, Emergency Operations Conversations. Again, my name is Jeff Perkins. Stay safe, stay connected, and we'll see you next time we activate the EOC.